If there's anything that we've learned over the past decade or so, it's that the walls of journalism have come tumbling down. Nationally, we see all over the country people from all walks of life reporting news in their own way. Do you know we have people like that right here in Western New York? We're going to talk to them in a moment, and they're going to tell us about some of the issues they have with popular social media platforms as well as what they report on. It's all right here on this week's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which is brought to you by... Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. The Linden Honeoye Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa. Well, that's all working fine here. Hey, welcome everyone to today's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa, your host, as the man says, and today with us we have Karen and Roy Harvey. Karen and Roy, they're the producers of the Chautauqua Report, which many of you know because I know that you've told me to bring them on the show and interview them. So I have. Karen and Roy, how are you doing this morning?
Very well. Good morning, Chris. Good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourselves, your backgrounds, maybe how you got interested in this angle of reporting, and we'll get into some more details about specifically what you do. But right now, I just want to know a little bit about yourselves.
Okay. Well, I'll begin. We started out about 1963. Karen majored in French at the Sorbonne. After we got married in 63, I worked in Alaska with CBS. Karen worked with UPI as a photographer, and then we moved to Seattle, where she worked as a photographer for the Seattle Times. And then she moved to the Oregonian as the first full-time photographer there. Subsequently, after the Oregonian, we moved to the Chicago Tribune, where she was the first female photographer there. I worked in radio, television, and newspapers until we both retired about 1998. And we decided we were going to try to correct some of the things that we'd done in media by initiating our own media. And that's when we started Snowshoe Films, about 1999.
Snowshoe Films in this area was mainly related to things like rails to trails, organic farming, and the environment. But as time went on, we saw some really major problems regarding the general direction that things were going and the incompetency of our mainstream media to report. So we started doing a lot more of the local issues that were things that we saw in front of us. For instance, we in this western area have become inundated with industrial wind turbines and solar panels. We have 60 of them coming at our county alone. There's evidence that this doesn't even come to net zero in terms of the amount of energy that's produced. So we've explored all of those things, but the way we do it is we give the experts the voice to that, and the local residents have voice, and we don't intervene with our voices at all. We simply interview people and produce evidence to motivate those things.
That's great. So you actually are coming at this with a background in journalism. But let me ask you, how easy is it for someone without a background in journalism to do something like what you do? Maybe not exactly what you do, because obviously you're coming at it with experience that they don't have. But how easy is it for other people to, say, report just on their own local communities?
Well, it's a lot easier with the kind of cameras and editing systems that are available. When I was in television, it would cost you $200,000 to put together an editing console that you could do anything with. Now you can edit virtually free with one of the internet programs. So it's a lot easier. And it has to be just essentially curiosity. One of the things that got us started was the shutting down of the Dunkirk plant. It was outrageous. It was Cuomo's program to end coherent energy and destroy the tax base for Dunkirk and much of the county. And then they started putting in these wind turbines. So story after story just appears, and I think it's a good question, but I think people can really get involved, become the press that essentially has evaporated.
You can also do it with your phone. In fact, we're not up to speed on the fact that you can stream live. If you have a phone, you can stream live your legislature, your town boards, your school boards, any activity that's going on. I mean, we documented the nurses patrolling the protesting in front of the hospitals because they were forced to be vaccinated, and they had seen the terrible effects of the vaccines, and they could. That's an example of one of the things that has been censored since we did film it. But people with their phones can put that up live, or can, as Roy said, put it through their computer and edit it to be tighter, and then just put it on YouTube. It's very simple, very, very simple.
One of the first things that,
Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that first really concerned us was the shutting down of nursing homes. It was a mandate from Cuomo to get all public nursing homes out of business. And we focused on that for almost a year, until finally they were pretty much destroyed, except for a few counties in New York.
I think what people could do, what you're doing by allowing your subjects full voice. If you watch your videos, it's not really narrated in any sense. It's really just raw feed that you're getting. And, you've produced them so that they look nice and everything. They look professional. But the fact that you don't have to physically interview somebody, I think that makes it easier for other people to get into this, that they don't feel the burden of having to interview their subjects. They could just film it live, like you say, and the more that do that, the more that news gets out there. Well, let's talk a little bit more specifically about what you do and what your site is. I'm going to pull it up here in a second and show everyone where it is. There it is. If you can describe what we're seeing here and how it works, I'll just let people go ahead and talk about it.
The Civil War, and
Sorry,
it's a subject that's really interested me. Essentially, that's right. The states are not able to seriously question the federal government, and the Civil War was an institution, a phenomenon that really made that happen, so that all power was put in the hands of the central government, and states were disallowed from any kind of involvement. And that's really had a devastating effect. The other film there is Senator Borrello. We film press conferences whenever we can. Jim Ostrowski is the other one. The one to the right of Jim Ostrowski are two school teachers. And that's a big
Homeschooling.
issue.
She's
Yeah.
homeschooling. That's how to homeschool your children in the face of these overreach by the state. So
It's a big issue for us now, is homeschooling, essentially, because we realize that essentially what we're up against is government schools. And these many women and men are pulling their children out so that they won't be forced to be vaccinated or wear masks. Perhaps that's changing.
And once again, it was our curiosity that got us to look at these people, because we never thought about it at all. But it's a coherent and very well organized group of people that provide a curriculum that goes back to the traditions of this country: reading, writing, arithmetic, and essentially the culture that we've all grown up with. And the threat of the mandates has the other aspect of it. So then there's speakers below that include a legislator from Cattaraugus County and a teacher who was forced out of her position. That's Angela Bittinger. She's well known now because she did not comply with the mandates. Then the other things that if you scroll up, are our county legislature and the speakers that present themselves there on various issues. I can't think what else now. Wind turbines in the lake. We let every expert that wants to talk about wind turbines in the lake. Then we have medical people who explain what is in this vaccine and what people should know about what the government and the CDC is doing through the vaccines. We've got what are those priests called? They're called the against tyranny.
Black Robe.
The Black Robe Regiment. We're just very curious about all of these things, and you put a microphone and a camera up, and they'll talk. You don't have to even ask a question. Then there's the Moog, the large factory, the defense producer Moog factory that had 500 people protest the mandates that they are being forced to comply with, which of course have been dropped now after people have lost their jobs, their livelihoods, their homes, their children, everything, destroyed, and it's all, it's just going to curiously show what's going on.
If anyone really has any kind of event, or we've tried to cover many of the organizations like the Freedom Seekers there, and the Libertarian Party, and
Constitutional Coalition,
any group really that has doing something, we're usually there.
So anybody that calls us, we'll come and film them.
So first of all, how do people get on to this site? You can subscribe to this YouTube channel, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
It's Chautauqua Updates. One word, Chautauqua Updates.
And we hand out cards as many as we can, and people have our access to our number, and usually we put it in our films.
So let's talk a little bit about your coverage area, because even though it's called Chautauqua Updates, you actually range through a pretty far area here.
One of the first films we did over there in Steuben County was on the nursing homes, and so wherever there was a nursing home in danger, we were trying to cover it. Another thing too is if an event is especially interesting to us, we try to travel and cover it. We went to Texas and spent 2 weeks down there covering the border crisis, and there are 4 films there up on the Texas border crisis. We interviewed a lot of farmers and ranchers and people from the very far south of Texas.
And then Wyoming County, Erie County, Allegheny County, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, and Pennsylvania in the neighboring county, because there is a lot of effort there by the parents and the educators to try to get the school system back on track. And so the activity at the school boards is always good to show.
So how do people find out about you? How do they know what you do?
Unfortunately,
how do they find out about how do they just discover you to go and watch you, let alone contact you to tell you or ask you how to cover an event that they're doing?
It's pretty accidental. I mean, we're pretty much frozen out of the media, so we don't have advertising that way. It's just word of mouth, and people bump into us and say, "Oh yeah, I saw your stuff." But we've been at this for about 22 years now, with Snowshoe Films and Chautauqua Updates and other activities, so it sort of gets it around. But most people we run into never heard of us, so go it. Who knows,
But if you use the word Chautauqua Updates, I think it pops up in YouTube. I don't know. I mean, on Google. But YouTube has been removing and giving us serious warnings about any time we film something and show parents talking to their school boards, nurses talking to their hospitals, and educators talking to the world in general about what's going on in the school system. It's gone.
We'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment, and maybe how you've addressed that right after this break. Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Love it, love it.
Well,
Beautiful.
You've got a little sneak preview of not only 50 Hidden Gems, but one of your broadcasts. And I had that queued up because I wanted to go into this part of the show to talk about how you've been able to kind of get around this, what amounts to a YouTube, say, censorship of your show. So tell us a little bit what you've done and where you've done it, and I'll pull up a couple of things that sort of give you the example when we get there.
Okay, we began in 2006 with YouTube. It was really a wonderful institution back then. It wasn't owned by Google. Essentially, it was sold out, and we began to see the kind of self-censoring that was required to stay it on, because we would have warnings. There would be a warning. This video contradicts. Wikipedia says this about the climate. You're contradicting the official narrative. And recently, of course, with COVID, it really became severe, because anything that contradicted the required narrative, largely produced by the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and Gates and the rest of it, we've had to look for other venues. And fortunately, many of them have popped up, like Brighteon and BitChute and many others.
So Brighteon is Mike Adams' format that allows many different productions to be put up on the air, and they censor very little. I mean, there's no pornography, of course, but so when we go back to the many things, yes, Roy just mentioned climate. That was another subject, caused real turmoil in our area because the debate continues. Why would we put solar and wind in this area? Well, we're a red area, and of course, the powers that be are blue. They think they can take advantage of this poor, uninhabited, they think, area and put these monstrosities up that don't produce enough power but destroy our environment and our economies. We're based on tourism and recreation, and to wipe out tens of thousands of acres to put up utility solar that's a net zero. To us, there's lots of experts out there that can address that, and so that's what we have done. That we get away with, but other things on YouTube, such as the nurses who know the impacts of being vaccinated and refuse to do it. No, you can't talk about that. Those people have seen it firsthand. That is removed, and we get a nasty warning from YouTube.
We got the last warning we got. We put up one short video contradicting the narrative. It was just an elderly woman who had criticisms, and YouTube said, "We're taking this down." It was taken down within 15 seconds of being put up, and the warning says you're not allowed to put anything up for 2 weeks, and if we find you violating our protocols, we'll take you down to completely. And that's about, 300 videos that we've done since 2006 on YouTube. So we really self-censor. If we've got anything really important to say that we think might contradict the narrative, we try to find another venue.
Do they actually tell you why they take it down, or do they just give you this generic warning?
It violates the standards. They give you a big flash that says, this violates your standard, our community standards.
But it's very vague, because you're supposed to self-censor. So they really don't give you much. They'll say it violates the standards, like Karen said, and that's it. But you begin to know what the standards are. Anything that the World Economic Forum wants, or the UN wants, violates their standards if you contradict it.
So I showed your website that this is your Snowshoe
Correct.
Films website, and you've got some things here that people can go see. And there's other sites that you use too. That is, tell us a little bit how often, say, this site is updated versus BitChute or Brighteon or some of the other non-YouTube sites that you use.
Well, we've used Vimeo in the past and a couple of others. Vimeo, the problem with other sites, YouTube has got the corner on the market because they essentially, anything you put up appears on Google. If you put it on Brighteon, Google doesn't pick it up. So it's really limited our ability to cover controversial issues, like a couple of nurses who have just been fired for not taking the vaccine. Can't get that up. Anything that contradicts their. And so the numbers, people that watch it, are very limited unless they know about it in advance. They can't really find it.
We have to send out the links and we had a trick where we take the Brighteon link and put it on a short film on YouTube and say, look, you can watch the rest of this on Brighteon. Here's the link. But YouTube got smart to that, and they take that out too. So unless we send you the link, you're not going to see Angela Bittinger confronting the school administration in Chautauqua County because she was, what can I say, suspended for expressing her reasons for not complying with the mandate. Unless you come to us and get the link, you can't find it.
So talk a little bit about Brighteon and BitChute. How do you find your films on those shows?
On Brighteon, you have to just, I don't know, it's kind of difficult, but sign into Brighteon and then do a word search for Your Yevra. Your Yevra is my name backward, Your Yevra. People were afraid of it at first because they thought it was Arabic or something. But at any rate, that's how you find it there. On BitChute, it's just Chautauqua Updates. And Vimeo and the others, it's just Chautauqua Updates. Pretty much can find it. And generally, we put up a note to say that you can find this video or our videos elsewhere. Sort of try.
Somebody like Angela Bittinger has so many views that if you typed in her name, one of our videos will come up just in Google, through Google. So ones that have gone viral, you can just search the subject and sometimes it'll come up.
So I saw on your YouTube channel that broadcast or that film has probably the most views of anything else, but that's not the one they took down. That's a different one.
No, for some strange reason they didn't. She didn't talk enough about violating the protocol, the World Economic Forum protocol, and somehow that slipped through, and they haven't taken it down. For example, you've got J.P. Woke or J.P. Sears, amazing kind of long-term viability. I mean, if we put anything up that critical and that good, they would immediately be taken down. But somehow he survived. So I think humor is really the primary way you can sneak by the demands of YouTube. But their algorithms are really quick, and if they're on you, it'll be down in 15 seconds with a warning.
Well, we'll see if they take this one down because we're interviewing you.
We're going to talk about.
Yeah, I know we're not done yet. Just very quickly, do you have your own email list so that you can email people whenever a new video comes up?
Yeah, we have 200 people, and we do share with our legislators and elected officials, and they do come back to us and say, well, thank you. And thank you for covering our presentation. For instance, Senator Borrello, on bail reform repeal. He wants that repealed because bail reform has had a terrible effect on the uptick in crime in all of our major cities. And so he just held that press conference a week ago. The whole press conference, not just the little snippet that the local channel puts up that this guy is opposing bail reform. No, he has 8 sheriffs and police chiefs and prosecutors and social workers who say, when somebody is held for a while, they get help. They don't go back out and shoot themselves up again. They get help. So that's fully explored in the presentation that we provide, whereas not true with the mainstream.
Again, it's really raw footage that you're providing so people can read or see the whole thing. I see reporting on a national level as simple as looking at headlines. They'll pull a quote from somebody and it's totally out of context. To be frank, this has happened to Trump pretty much ever since he started running. And I stopped reading the press reports on it because it was just not within the context of what he was saying. He would tell a joke and they would report it as something serious. So it's very, I don't know. This is the reporter in me is just saying, go to the source. Don't go to second hands. Just go right to where it's happening, and you'll get what's. Yeah. So let's talk about.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, we were curious, so we went to the inauguration, in 2021 was
2016.
16. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, you could not get into the place where the people were watching from the big esplanade in front of the Capitol. You couldn't, the security had held it out. There were 2 million people with us churning around the outsides in the streets. So whatever Trump said was true because security did not allow people into the space. Nobody really knows that, but we went there and we actually experienced it. We had to walk for 10, 20 miles. I'm sorry, it was about 5 miles. Felt like 100 miles.
Really.
Carrying
a lot of equipment.
We were.
Longer. Tripods.
There are just things that little details that you do not see unless you go yourself and see for yourself, and that's great.
And that's another thing too. 2016, a little bit before that, we were very keen on covering and watching Trump. So every time there was a rally, almost anywhere, Ohio, Pennsylvania, we went. That's about the area. Nothing happened in New York, of course, but we just covered every event we could. Got inside, interviewed people, asked them why they were interested, why they were for Trump, and then recorded the speeches. And that took up a lot of time, but it was a very interesting period.
Yeah, curiosity is.
I would be interested, actually, on the other side. Why do people not like him? I'm just.
We tried to find those demonstrations. We tried to find the rallies for Clinton and so forth. That was. But that was hard to get into, hard to find out, hard to discover.
It was nothing.
It was.
Well, let's talk about something a little bit more recent, and that was last night. I'm going to show a clip, but why don't you introduce it? Tell us a little bit about what you did last night, and then introduce the clip, and then you can talk more about it.
Well, the Tea Party here came up with the idea of giving the book by Robert F. Kennedy, The Real Anthony Fauci, to all the legislators and many of the unelected officials, and presented those last night at the monthly meeting. And it was a pretty good response. It wasn't a gift. It was an informational document so that we were allowed to give them out to the attorney and all the others. And several people, maybe 10, motivated why these legislators and others, the sheriff and so forth, should be interested in reading it. It's one of the most censored books in American history.
Well, here's a clip that you showed that is a sneak preview to your video on this, which isn't up yet.
Amen. What's the name of the book? The Real Anthony Fauci.
Murderer.
All right.
Hyphen.
Got it?
Yeah, so those people do also consist of the group that's just exploded into action in this region, just created itself out of citizens called Freedom Seekers of Western New York. And their efforts were part of that as well. And the books are just one of the many things. They support the teachers, they support the parents that go to the school boards, and they support the nurses and the medical people who are calling for treatment ahead of time, for real treatment for COVID, because that's not allowed. That is not allowed. And there are many, many experts in our area as well as the nation who, like the book explains, have provided preventive, through vitamins, vitamin D, zinc, quercetin, and procedures that prevent people from getting to the point where they need to be hospitalized. So people read from the book last night to the legislators. Each and every one of those 10 people read an excerpt, a story from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, which the legislators were very receptive to. They accepted the books graciously, and hopefully they will read them. And that includes our director of health here. Our health director received a book, as well as the county attorney and the county executive. So hopefully they will see the other side, because the other side is hard to find.
And we're tracking down those people who didn't make the meeting, and going to give them one too. The executives, like Goodell, our assemblyman, and Senator Barello, they'll get one. Yeah.
We're about out of time here, but we did have one question on this subject, and that is, when will the video be available for people to see? And are you going to put it on YouTube, or are you going to
Another week, but the legislature has it up on their Zoom page, but you have to scroll through to the end of the meeting. You have to go to about the second hour of the legislative meeting. So if you get the Chautauqua County Legislature and you look at their Facebook page, the most recent film that they have up is last night's legislature. You scroll to the end and you can see all the speakers talking about this book.
All right,
There were a couple of words that were ivermectin and hydrochloroquine that were stated. So we're still debating about whether we can get that past YouTube, because they're horrified at those two treatments.
Well, this video is
So we
going
might
up
wanna-
on Sunday, so if they don't like those words, we'll see what happens. So,
Okay.
so
All right.
Karen Roy, thank you very much. Again, it's Chautauqua Updates. You can go to their YouTube channel, or the other sites that they mentioned earlier. And again, if you want to ask questions to our guests live while we're doing the show, you need a special invitation to be invited to the audience. And to get that, you have to go to stateofgreaterwesternnewyork.com and just sign up for the invitation, for the registration for the invitation. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and each week you'll be invited to the show. I will mention this too. March 9th, we're hosting again a Greater Western New York Town Hall meeting virtually. If you want to be on that list, go to this same site, sign up, and we'll try to make sure that you get the invitation for that too. So that's it for this week. Thank you again, Karen and Roy. We'll see you next week. Otherwise, we'll see you on Sunday at 1:30 on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Bye-bye for now.